Welcome to the deep dive. Today we've got a stack of really compelling source material. We're talking reports, new research, even some insights from NASA.
And we're going to synthesize all of it for you.
Our mission is to tackle what might be one of the most critical but least talked about threats to, well, everything.
We're diving into what happens when a massive solar storm hits Earth.
And this isn't science fiction. The sources are, frankly, alarming.
Yeah, the consensus is pretty clear. The threat is existential, and its occurrence is purely a matter of time. We're looking at something called a coronal mass ejection, or CME,
Right, a CME.
and specifically the catastrophic vulnerability they expose in our modern, globally interconnected power infrastructure.
Okay, so let's unpack that. We're going to focus on how a repeat of a major historical event, the 1859 Carrington Event, would essentially trigger an immediate global technology collapse.
A single wave of solar plasma. That's all it takes.
An electrical disaster that it seems almost no one is preparing for.
Right, and our whole world, our infrastructure, it's all built on high-voltage transmission, on digital connectivity. It's fundamentally susceptible to this exact kind of cosmic event.
So our goal for you is to walk away understanding the mechanism, the history, and most importantly, the specific societal fallout that these reports are pointing to.
Let's start with that history.
Yes, the historical precedent. I mean, the sun is always throwing stuff out into space, right? So what makes the 1859 Carrington event the benchmark, the thing we measure everything against?
Well, the event itself is this massive plasma shell, an explosion of charged particles. That's the coronal mass ejection, the CME.
And in 1859, one of these hit Earth directly.
It did. And the consequences for that time were just extraordinary. Telegraph systems,
Yeah.
which were the most advanced tech of the era.
The Victorian internet, basically.
Exactly. They just shorted out. We have reports of operators getting shocked, sparks flying, and even telegraph paper catching fire.
And I read that people were seeing the aurora borealis, the northern lights, as far south as Central America. I mean, that just speaks to the sheer power of the magnetic disturbance.
Precisely. That intensity is the key. But here's the crucial aha moment that all the source material emphasizes.
Okay.
In 1859, the disaster was, well, it was largely contained to those limited wired systems.
Because the world wasn't built on electricity.
Not at all. It was industrial, agricultural, reliant on mechanical power. There were no power grids, no satellites, no global fiber optics.
So the whole system was resilient by default, really. It wasn't interconnected, it was analog.
Correct. The sources highlight this contrast so vividly. If a storm of that same magnitude, or even a slightly stronger one, were to hit us today, the difference wouldn't just be scaled up.
It would be a totally different kind of event.
It would be systemically catastrophic.
Hmm.
And that's because we rely 100% on a fragile electrical infrastructure that is just the perfect target for this kind of magnetic pulse.
That really sets the stage. Okay, so let's get into the mechanism. Because this is where we need to get specific for you listening. It's not just some vague charging the magnetic field. How does this solar plasma actually translate into physical widespread destruction? What's the engineering failure here?
This is the core technical takeaway. When a powerful CME hits Earth, that plasma shell, which is highly magnetized, it just slams into our planet's magnetosphere.
Our planetary shield.
Right. And that interaction generates something called geomagnetically induced currents, GICs.
GICs. Okay, that's the jargon we need to understand.
Exactly. Think of GICs as these massive rogue currents of almost pure DC electricity, and they want to flow along the path of least resistance,
Which would be.
or power lines. And critically, they flow right into the windings of high-voltage transformers.
And transformers are the backbone of the grid, but they're designed for AC, alternating current.
They are extremely vulnerable to direct current, to DC.
So these GICs basically sneak in through the power lines and just overload the most important part of the entire grid.
That's it. The DC current forces the magnetic core of the transformer way past its normal operating range. It's a condition called magnetic saturation.
And when it's saturated,
It stops working. It can't function. It generates extreme, intense heat, and within minutes, the sources are pretty clear on this, the transformer can fail catastrophically.
you mean it literally explodes.
Often, yes. Or the internal windings just melt. Either way, this multi-ton, highly specialized piece of equipment is rendered completely useless.
And what's the immediate result of losing, I don't know, a dozen, 100 of these crucial transformers all at once?
Continental grid failure. The sources are really definitive here. Electrical networks would not be able to resist for even a minute under a severe Carrington-level strike.
Got a minute.
Entire regions, maybe entire continents, would be plunged into a blackout simultaneously.
Uh-huh.
And you can't just run to the store for a new one. Replacing one of these large transformers can take 12 to 18 months or even longer to manufacture and install.
Wow. Okay. So if we have that kind of instantaneous grid collapse, let's look beyond just the lights going out. What happens to the digital world, the one that needs constant high-frequency power?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the digital destruction is extensive.
Okay. Where do we start?
First, the communication satellites.
Mm.
The backbone of GPS, weather tracking, modern comms, they're just sitting ducks up there.
Right.
The charged particle barrage would quickly make them inoperable. The sources say they would burn up. So GPS collapses immediately.
And that takes down everything from military precision to, the Maps app on your phone.
Absolutely. Then you have to consider the network on the ground. The internet is completely cut off.
Not just because the routers don't have power?
No, it's more fundamental. The long-distance fiber optic cables rely on these repeater stations and amplifiers that need continuous power. Once they fail from the GICs or just the power loss, all long-distance communication just stops.
The entire digital backbone of the global economy just vanishes.
In an instant.
This brings us to what is, for me, the most sobering part of this whole dive, the societal implications. We're talking about losing so much more than light. We're losing the essential services that sustain billions of people.
Yeah, and the source material offers a really critical insight here. We're not just, going back to 1859.
No.
We are moving backward from a point of extreme specialization and dependency. The world today is almost entirely outsourced to electricity.
And that's why the sources suggest this is actually worse than just reverting to a pre-technological era. Let's get specific. What are the points of fragility that make a modern blackout so catastrophic?
It all centers on logistics and density. Take a big city.
Okay.
They rely on massive electrically powered pumps to get water, vertically up skyscrapers, horizontally across miles. Without power, the water supply just stops almost immediately. Sanitation systems fail right after.
And what about the food chain? The whole just-in-time model for grocery stores relies on perfect sync and constant refrigeration.
Right. So if transportation and refrigeration fail, the food chain breaks down in days, not weeks, days.
And then there are critical services.
Hospitals can't run life support. They can't perform surgery. They can't keep temperature-sensitive medicine safe for very long. Airports are grounded. The failure just cascades from a technical problem into a full-scale humanitarian crisis. Very, very rapidly.
You mentioned the economy earlier. What happens to global finance if all that connectivity is just gone?
Modern financial markets rely on millisecond, sometimes microsecond transactions across continents.
Right. High-frequency trading.
Exactly. An instantaneous failure of communication and power doesn't just halt trading. It prevents the data recovery needed to even know who owns what.
So the records are just lost.
Or inaccessible. The banking system essentially collapses because the entire infrastructure supporting currency, credit, and asset ownership has been, incinerated.
That is vital context, which leads to the question that just jumps off the page when you read this stuff.
I think I know where you're going.
If the risk is known, if the consequences are this apocalyptic, and if the mechanism, the GICs and the transformers, is scientifically understood, why haven't we fixed this?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? It really comes down to regulatory inertia versus cost.
It's expensive to fix.
Very expensive. Hardening the grid means deploying specialized equipment, things like neutral grounding resistors, which can absorb that excess GIC energy. Or it means building up a huge stockpile of spare shielded transformers.
And the utility companies don't want to pay for it.
Well, the cost of prevention is high, and since these events are infrequent, it's a hard sell. Leaders, both corporate and political, often defer that immense investment until after the next crisis, which in this case would be far too late.
So we are, in essence, taking a massive calculated risk based on short-term economics, even though the sources all tell us this is inevitable.
That's right. And that's why the public is sleeping on this issue, as one source put it, because the vulnerability is technical. It's invisible until the moment it's not.
This has been deeply insightful. Let's shift gears for the end here. Let's conclude with what measures are being explored, because the tech to solve this isn't science fiction, right? It's engineering.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And the sources outline 3 key mitigation strategies. First is space weather monitoring.
Better forecasting.
Exactly. We have a few satellites watching the sun, but We need more. We need advanced real-time monitoring to give utility operators hours or maybe even a day of warning.
And that warning time would be critical. It would let them execute controlled shutdowns or other protective measures. What's next?
The second and most direct solution is hardening the grid.
The fix itself.
This involves installing those devices we mentioned, the neutral grounding resistors, onto transformers in key substations. They act like safety valves, shunting the dangerous DC currents safely to the ground. It protects the transformer.
Okay, and given the long manufacturing time for new transformers, the third strategy has to address that bottleneck.
It does. The third strategy is a strategic spares program. Governments and regional utilities need to create physical reserves of these large, high-voltage transformers ready to be deployed instantly.
Like a form of societal insurance?
Precisely. If a catastrophic event takes out 300 transformers, having even 50 or 100 spares ready to go cuts the recovery time from years down to many months.
This whole conversation just underscores it for me. The event itself, the CME, is unavoidable.
A fact of nature.
But the catastrophe that follows is entirely preventable. It comes down to engineering and political will. The sources we looked at end with the same statement. The question is not if, but when.
And our deep dive shows that since the damage is directly linked to a specific technical failure, the conversation has to shift from just fear to specific, actionable investment in resilience.
So, as a final provocative thought for you to take away and explore, considering the massive geopolitical implications of a global communications and power collapse, who do you think should be responsible for funding and enforcing this? Should it be the private utility companies? Or should national governments treat grid resilience as a matter of absolute national security?
It's a political question wrapped in a technical challenge.
Sure.
Thank you for bringing us the material for this deep dive. It's a conversation that clearly needs a global focus and fast.
Until next time, stay curious.
And maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe pay a little more attention to the sunspot reports.